Living in a bustling apartment complex in downtown Chicago, I was used to the hum of constant activity. New faces moved in and out frequently, and most of the time I barely got to know anyone beyond a polite nod in the hallway. But all of that changed when Rachel moved in next door. Rachel was striking, with her easy smile, dark curls, and piercing eyes that seemed to notice everything. From the first time we met in the hallway, her presence threw me off balance. We would run into each other every now and then, at the mailbox, in the lobby, or sometimes by pure coincidence while grabbing coffee at the nearby cafe. Each encounter felt oddly electric, as if there was an unspoken understanding between us. But as much as I felt a pull toward her, there was one complication. Rachel had a roommate, Ben. From what I understood, Ben had been Rachel's friend for years before they moved in together. They shared an easygoing camaraderie, and though it seemed innocent, I couldn't shake the sense that there was something more beneath the surface. One Friday evening, after a long week, I returned home and decided to unwind on my balcony with a glass of wine. The city lights glittered around me, and the cool breeze felt like a welcome escape from the chaos of work. I was lost in thought when I heard a familiar voice call out from the neighboring balcony. "Rough week?" Rachel asked, leaning against the railing with a mischievous smile. I chuckled, holding up my glass. "You could say that. Care to join me?" Without hesitation, she ducked back inside and returned with a glass of her own, and within moments we were both settled into conversation. Talking with her was effortless. We laughed, shared stories, and soon the conversation took a deeper turn. She opened up about her struggles balancing work and her personal life, the challenges of living with a close friend, and the strange tension that often seemed to surface with Ben. As the night wore on, I couldn't help but notice the subtle shifts in her demeanor. The way she leaned in, the lingering eye contact, the casual brush of her hand against mine when she laughed. It was as if there was an invisible line between us, a boundary that was there but felt increasingly fragile. We were both aware of it, both testing it, though neither of us dared to cross it. Just then her phone buzzed with a message. She glanced at the screen, her face shadowed for a moment. "Ben's out for the night," she said, almost absent-mindedly. Something in her tone sent a thrill through me, and I found myself searching her eyes, wondering if she was thinking what I was. But as quickly as it had come, the moment passed, and she stood up to say goodnight. "Thanks for the company," she murmured, her eyes lingering on mine before she disappeared back into her apartment, leaving me alone with a racing heart and a head full of questions. The following day, I tried to brush off our encounter as a harmless evening between neighbors. But the memory of her laughter, the warmth in her gaze, refused to leave me. I went about my day, trying to focus on work, errands, anything that would take my mind off Rachel. Later that afternoon, I was heading back up to my apartment when the elevator doors opened, and there she was, carrying a bag of groceries and grinning up at me with that same mischievous smile. "Fancy meeting you here," she said. I laughed, stepping inside. "Guess we have good timing." The elevator ride felt longer than usual, the silence between us thick with tension. When we reached our floor, I helped her carry her groceries to her door, feeling a strange sense of closeness as we stood there, hands brushing as we set the bags down. Just as I was about to leave, Rachel cleared her throat, her expression suddenly serious. "You know, last night was nice," she said, her voice soft. I nodded, unsure of where she was going with this. It was. It felt different. She looked down almost shyly before meeting my gaze with an intensity that made my pulse quicken. "Maybe we could do it again sometime," she murmured, and before I could fully process her words, she leaned in, her lips brushing against my cheek in a gesture that felt both innocent and incredibly loaded. Over the next few weeks, Rachel and I continued our balcony meetings, each one feeling more intimate than the last. Sometimes, Ben would come home during our conversations, and the dynamic would shift. Rachel would go from open and relaxed to reserved and guarded, and I couldn't help but wonder what was going through her mind. One evening, Ben invited me over for a small gathering he and Rachel were hosting. I accepted, though the thought of being around both of them left me with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. When I arrived, the atmosphere was lively. Ben was his usual charismatic self, joking and laughing with everyone. Rachel, on the other hand, seemed distracted, her gaze drifting to me with a flicker of something I couldn't quite read. There was an underlying tension between us, a silent acknowledgement of the connection we shared, even in the midst of a crowd. As the night wore on, Ben disappeared into the kitchen, leaving Rachel and me alone in the living room. The music played softly in the background, and our voices grew quieter, our conversation more intimate. She leaned in close, her hand brushing against mine, and for a moment everything else faded away. Before I knew it, we were standing close, her eyes searching mine as if asking permission. I felt the intensity of the moment, the weight of the decision hanging between us. But before either of us could say a word, Ben reappeared, breaking the spell. Later that night, as I was getting ready for bed, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find Rachel standing there, her face illuminated by the hallway light. She looked nervous, almost guilty, but there was a determination in her eyes that made my heart pound. "I couldn't sleep," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I stepped aside, letting her in, and we stood there in the dimly lit room, the silence thick with unspoken words. She took a step closer, her hand reaching up to touch my face, and suddenly, all the boundaries we'd been carefully maintaining shattered. We kissed, the tension and desire that had been building between us finally finding release. It was a moment of pure intensity, a whirlwind of emotions that left us both breathless. When we finally pulled away, the reality of what we'd done settled over us, but neither of us spoke. For the next few days, we tried to avoid each other, though it was nearly impossible given that we lived next door. But the pull between us was undeniable, and soon we found ourselves drawn back into each other's orbit. Rachel confessed that her relationship with Ben had always been complicated, that they had a history that was both beautiful and messy. She told me about their ups and downs, the times they had almost crossed the line, but something always held them back. "But with you," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "it feels different." Her words hit me like a wave, and I knew that I felt the same way. We both understood the risks, the potential fallout, but there was a part of me that couldn't walk away. One evening, as I was leaving my apartment, I ran into Ben. He looked tired, worn down, as if he'd been carrying a weight he couldn't shake. "Hey," he said, his voice unusually serious. "Can we talk?" I nodded, bracing myself for whatever was coming. He led me into his apartment, offering me a drink before sitting down with a sigh. For a moment, he seemed to struggle with his words, his gaze distant. "Look, I don't know what's going on with Rachel," he began, his tone careful, "but I can't shake the feeling that something's changed." I swallowed, my heart racing as he continued. "We've been through a lot, she and I," he admitted, his voice tinged with regret. "And I guess sometimes I wonder if maybe we're better off as friends." The admission left me stunned, a mix of relief and guilt swirling in my mind. It felt as though he knew, as if he was giving me his blessing, though neither of us said it out loud. As I left, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was shifting, that the unspoken boundaries were crumbling. That night, Rachel came over again, and this time, there was no hesitation. We both knew what we wanted, what we were risking, but the connection between us was too powerful to ignore. Days turned into weeks, and our secret meetings became a regular escape from reality. We were both aware of the fragile nature of our situation, the delicate balance we were trying to maintain. But each stolen moment, each whispered confession only deepened our bond. Then, one evening, Rachel revealed something that changed everything. We were sitting together in my living room, the lights dim, her fingers lightly tracing patterns on my hand as she spoke. "There's something I haven't told you," she began, her voice quiet and hesitant. "Ben and we were never just friends." My heart dropped as her words sank in, though I tried to keep my face neutral. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to mask the swirl of emotions that her admission stirred in me. Rachel looked down, avoiding my gaze. "Before we moved in together, Ben and I were involved. We had a relationship that was more than just friendship, but we decided to stay close after we ended things. I thought we could keep it casual, just be roommates and friends, but it's always been complicated." I exhaled, suddenly understanding the hidden tension that had been there all along. It explained so much, the lingering looks, the ease with which they navigated each other's space. But as much as the revelation stung, it didn't change my feelings for her. If anything, it made them stronger. I understood now that Rachel had been fighting her own battles, wrestling with the pull of old feelings while navigating the connection we shared. So, where does that leave us? I finally asked, meeting her gaze with a mixture of hope and apprehension. Rachel took my hands in hers, her eyes filled with a newfound resolve. I know this sounds messy, and maybe it's selfish, but I want to figure this out with you. I need to figure it out with you. The weight of her words filled me with both relief and fear. We were embarking on something unknown, something dangerous, and yet I couldn't bring myself to walk away. The allure of our connection, the promise of something real, was too strong. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Rachel and I continued to see each other, our time together woven into the spaces between her life with Ben and my own busy schedule. We tried to keep things discreet, but the excitement of our secret made every moment feel like a hidden adventure. One night, as we were laughing over a glass of wine in my apartment, Rachel's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and her expression turned serious. "It's Ben," she murmured. "He's asking where I am." We exchanged a look, the reality of our situation settling heavily between us. The secrecy, the stolen moments had all felt exciting, but we both knew that we couldn't keep it hidden forever. That evening, Rachel decided to go home, and I spent the night alone, haunted by the possibility of what might happen if Ben ever found out. The thrill was fading, replaced by the weight of what we were risking. The following weekend, everything came to a head. I was at home, lost in thought, when I heard a knock at my door. Opening it, I found myself face to face with Ben. His expression was unreadable, his gaze intense as he studied me. "Mind if I come in?" he asked, his tone calm but guarded. My heart raced as I stepped aside, unsure of what he might know or what he was here to say. He walked in, looking around as if searching for something, before finally meeting my gaze. "Rachel told me about you two," he said, his voice a mixture of sadness and resignation. "I suspected something was going on, but hearing it from her, it's different." I swallowed, my mind reeling with a mix of guilt and relief. This was the moment I had dreaded, the moment when the secret we had shared was finally exposed. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Ben," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Ben nodded, his expression softening. "I know. Rachel told me everything. She's always been honest, even when it hurts. That's just who she is." The tension between us lingered, a silent understanding passing between us. He took a deep breath and, to my surprise, extended his hand. "Take care of her," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "I hope this works out for you both." I shook his hand, feeling a strange sense of closure. Ben left, and as I closed the door, I knew that my life with Rachel was just beginning. The complications, the risks, they were all part of the journey. But in that moment, I felt ready for whatever lay ahead, knowing that some connections are worth every risk, every obstacle, and every whispered secret. The weeks that followed were filled with a sense of freedom, as if Rachel and I had broken through the barriers that had held us back. Our relationship no longer carried the weight of secrecy. We could finally enjoy being together without glancing over our shoulders or hiding in the shadows. Rachel moved in with me shortly after her conversation with Ben, and while the transition wasn't without its challenges, it felt like we were creating something real, something built on honesty and trust. We made a home together, combining our routines and learning the nuances of each other's daily habits. There were moments of laughter, of clumsy morning coffees, and quiet evenings where we'd unwind, talking late into the night about our dreams and plans. But just as life was settling into a beautiful rhythm, something unexpected happened. One evening, as Rachel was cleaning out some old boxes, she came across a letter. It was from Ben. He had written it during the last days they lived together, a mixture of an apology and a final goodbye. Rachel read it aloud, her voice soft and steady, but I could see the emotions playing across her face. The letter spoke of regret, of missed chances, and the love Ben still felt for her. It was raw and heartfelt, and as she read, I could feel a mixture of emotions welling up in me. Rachel paused, setting the letter down with a sigh. "He's moved on," she said quietly, but I didn't realize how much I still meant to him. I thought I was doing the right thing, but maybe I should have handled things differently. The room grew quiet, the weight of her words settling between us. Though I didn't doubt her love for me, I knew that the past still lingered, an unspoken piece of her that would always belong to Ben. A few days later, as if life wanted to test the strength of our bond, Rachel received a call from Ben. He was moving out of the city, and he wanted to see her one last time. She asked me if it was all right, her eyes filled with the unspoken promise that nothing would change between us. I trusted her, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little uneasy. When she returned from meeting Ben, Rachel was quiet. She sat beside me, her hand slipping into mine, and she shared a bittersweet smile. "He's moving on, really moving on this time," she said. "It's over, for real." We held each other, the weight of everything we'd been through filling the silence. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was real, imperfect, honest, and ours. We were no longer haunted by past relationships or the lingering what-ifs. What mattered was that we had chosen each other, and we were ready to face whatever lay ahead together, side by side. In the end, our story was a testament to the messy, unpredictable nature of love and loyalty. And as we moved forward, I knew that whatever life threw at us, we would face it with the strength we had built, one imperfect moment at a time.